A system alert flashes. The story's protagonist, Charles Einhard, has appeared. The golden-haired hero looks on, calling the challenge utter recklessness. But our boy grins back with a fiery intensity, calling it courage instead. Charles vows to defeat him and walk the path of the Overlord. And our MC? The system reveals he's the original author, reincarnated as a mob. The battle begins instantly, the very ground shattering from their presence. Their blades clash as blue lightning meets a blazing orange aura. The force of their meeting cracks the earth beneath their feet. Two immense energies collide, tearing the desolate landscape apart. The author leaps through the blast, ready to strike his own creation. But Charles Einhard meets the attack with a cold, calculating glare. The author descends like a meteor, his fiery blade crashing down. He follows through with a ground-shattering stomp, relentless in his assault. But the hero is too quick, using the debris to create distance. He reveals he's already memorized the author's attack patterns. With a smirk, Charles gathers an immense amount of lightning into his blade. Our boy realizes his fatal mistake. He's become predictable. The hero unleashes a devastating wave of pure azure energy. And just like that, the author gets a harsh lesson in protagonist plot armor. He's sent crashing into the earth, broken but not yet defeated. He pushes himself up, battered and bruised, but his will remains unbroken. But Charles gives him no time to recover, descending for the final strike. The author desperately tries to hold back the overwhelming tide of azure power. In that moment, a horrifying realization dawns on his face. The hero's blade cuts through the air, a streak of merciless blue light. It finds its mark, tearing through flesh and bone with devastating force. The searing pain is unimaginable as the lightning-infused steel rips him apart. He can only stand there, impaled by the hero's righteous judgment. A fitting title for a battle between a creator and his own creation. With cold, unwavering eyes, Charles Einhard declares the fight is over. With a final, merciless swing, Charles Einhard ends the battle. The author can only scream as the azure energy tears through his body. He's driven into the earth, carving a massive chasm in his wake. The impact sends a shockwave across the desolate wasteland. But just when it seems like it's all over, a new power begins to awaken. From the depths of the crater, a sinister red aura erupts violently. Our boy sits amidst the rubble, his body broken but his spirit stirring. Though covered in wounds, his expression is strangely serene. Then a single eye snaps open, burning with a new terrifying light. His mind flashes back to a different life, a different name, Sato Shota. He remembers himself as Sato Shota, a humble novelist, a writer who miraculously penned a 400-chapter hit series. He was the proud author of the Overlord's heroic saga, and his creation was about to be adapted into a game. All the sleepless nights and endless struggles were finally paying off. All he had to do was sign the contract placed before him. With a steady hand, he etched his name, sealing his destiny. He believed a brilliant future awaited him, but the universe is a harsh editor. In the next moment, he was inexplicably falling through the sky. His last thought was a single desperate question. Why? He remembers plummeting from a skyscraper, a scream tearing from his throat. The world below rushed up to meet him in a dizzying blur of lights. But the memory shifts. He's on a rooftop, looking up in utter confusion. A man in a sharp suit stood over him, offering some truly unhelpful advice. With a chilling smile, the stranger claimed this was all for Sato's own good. Sato begged for his life, his mind screaming that this man was dangerous. The man simply chuckled, repeating Sato's panicked thoughts back to him. A wave of confusion hit him. He hadn't actually said a word out loud. The stranger's face twisted into a horrifying visage, revealing he could read minds. And with that terrifying revelation, Sato was sent plummeting to his first death. The stranger's foot comes down with cold, deliberate force. It crushes Sato's fingers, breaking his desperate hold on the ledge. He cries out, a mix of agony and disbelief at the sheer cruelty. His grip slips, his knuckles white against the unyielding pressure. Rage boils over as he realizes this is truly the end of his life. His mind races with regret, for his mother, for his wasted efforts. But his greatest regret, leaving his own story unfinished. A single burning desire begins to form in the abyss of his despair. His hand clenches, not in surrender but in a final act of defiance. As he falls, fear is replaced by a ferocious, all-consuming will to live. His eyes burn with a new violet intensity, reflecting the flames of his rage. He clutches his head as an uncontrollable power erupts from his body. The ground explodes outwards, unable to contain his violent awakening. A pillar of pure destruction ascends into the blood-red sky. The inferno expands, turning the entire world into a vision of hell. He finds himself in a void, questioning the devastation he's just caused. The scene flashes to a city being consumed by the very same fire, and the man from the rooftop is there, looking down on him once more. The stranger is shocked, realizing Sato possessed the Berserker trait, and suddenly he's being choked, completely at the stranger's mercy. The stranger seems almost ecstatic, marveling at the power Sato has unleashed. He promises that this newfound power will grant Sato a completely new life, a life inside the very world that Sato himself created. And with a cryptic farewell, the stranger simply lets him go. For the second time, Sato Shota plummets towards an uncertain fate. A voice echoes in the darkness, calling him by his old name. He slams into the earth, the impact a brutal re-entry into existence. He slowly comes to, the haze of death and rebirth clearing from his mind. But the world he wakes up in is not the one he left behind. A system window confirms his worst fears. He's been isekai'd into his own novel. The full weight of his situation crashes down on him. But he's immediately pulled from his thoughts by a sound from the woods. A monstrous bear barrels towards him, its roar shaking the very ground. His mind can barely process the immediate life-threatening danger. Razor-sharp claws descend, aiming to tear him to shreds. But after 2 deaths, he refuses to go down a 3rd time. He throws himself aside, dodging the swipe by a hair's breadth. And as luck would have it, a conveniently placed axe lies waiting. With a gauntleted hand, he snatches the weapon, ready to fight back. Armed and desperate, Sato charges forward to face his first real monster. The beast roars, its eyes burning with a terrifying primal fury. But Sato meets its rage with his own, swinging the axe with a desperate yell. The blade connects with a sickening crunch, tearing through hide and bone. The sheer force of the blow sends the massive creature flying into the air. It crashes back to earth with a ground-shaking thud, completely motionless. Sato can only stare, bewildered by the impossible strength in his own hands. But his confusion quickly turns to sheer, unadulterated panic. He remembers being pushed from that rooftop, his first life stolen from him. And then waking up here, inside the very world that he had created. He finally understands his body has evolved, and he's not exactly thrilled about it. He inspects his new body, starting with a pair of perfectly trained biceps, then a thick chest chiseled like a statue's, and finally, a set of abs that look like they were carved from stone. The former novelist can hardly believe this is his own body. But the changes aren't just skin deep. Something else feels different. His focus sharpens, drawn to a single drop of dew on a distant leaf. He follows its descent, the world seeming to slow down around him. The world comes alive in a way he's never experienced. His senses are razor sharp. Then his heightened sense of smell picks up an unwelcome scent. His eyes flare with intensity. It's the same beastly odor from before. And it's not just one bear, it's a whole family reunion from hell. Sato wisely decides that now is an excellent time to leave. But as he turns to flee, a piercing scream cuts through the forest. His escape plan comes to a screeching, panicked halt. Somewhere else in these treacherous mountains, a tragedy has unfolded. A group of warriors lies slaughtered, their bodies littering the ground. A lone survivor recounts the horror. 4 bears, all of them deadly. She watches in terror as the beasts feast upon her fallen comrades. But a single misplaced step, a snapping twig, shatters the silence. And just like that, the monster's attention snaps directly to her. Pure, unadulterated terror fills the warrior's eyes as she's discovered. The beast descends upon her, a maelstrom of claws and fury. She throws herself to the side, a desperate scream tearing from her throat. But another one is already on her, its eyes burning with crimson rage. In her mind, she accepts her fate, a final plea to live echoing in her thoughts. But just as the end seems certain, a fist cuts through the air. It connects with the beast's jaw in a brutal, bone-shattering impact. The monster is sent tumbling through the air like a discarded toy. Sato stares at his hand, completely baffled by his own ridiculous power. The warrior can only stare back, calling him by a name that isn't his. She looks up in disbelief, mistaking him for someone named Attila. Her confusion turns to terror, screaming a warning about the danger right behind him. He turns just in time to see the rest of the angry family reunion charging in. He braces himself, realizing he's now facing a trio of enraged monsters. The warrior desperately warns him that it's a fight he can't possibly win. But a dark, almost manic grin spreads across Sato's face, challenging her words. The beasts let out a deafening roar, their eyes burning with primal rage. Her warning only fuels his desire to test the limits of his new power. He slams his fist into the ground, shattering the earth with raw power. In a truly absurd display of strength, he uses one bear as a club against the other. He swings his makeshift club with brutal force, counting his first victim. With a feral look in his eyes, he leaps towards his next target. The second beast can only roar in defiance as he descends upon it. He lands another devastating blow, taking down the second monster in a blur. Two are down, but the third is already stirring, refusing to stay beaten. Sato doesn't hesitate, driving his fist directly into the beast's skull. The sheer force of the blow sends the creature reeling backwards. And with a final decisive strike, this family reunion is officially cancelled. He lands firmly on the ground, his whirlwind assault finally over. But his work isn't done, as his hand closes around a discarded spear. He launches himself into the air, spear aimed at the last remaining monster. With a golden arc of light, his blade cleaves through the air with impossible speed. The beast is torn in two, a testament to his newfound terrifying strength. The lone survivor can only watch, her mind struggling to comprehend the scene. A crimson rain falls from the sky, marking the end of the brutal massacre. Sato lands amidst the carnage, the dust settling on his decisive victory. He rises to his feet, a smirk playing on his lips as he surveys his work. But he's got one burning question. Just who the hell is this Attila guy? Before he can get an answer, the warrior throws her arms around him in a desperate hug. Tears of relief stream down her face as she confesses she never lost faith in him. Sato is completely overwhelmed by the sudden, very personal thank you. She's overjoyed, ready to take him home to a hero's welcome. But Sato is still trying to figure out who this Attila even is. And just like that, the universe decides to fill in the blanks for him. The memories of the body's original owner flood his mind in a torrent. He sees Attila's entire life, right up to its brutal, untimely end. The young warrior was betrayed, left for dead during his rite of passage, all part of a conspiracy, orchestrated by a shadowy, smiling rival. So he's not the hero, just a barbarian extra who was supposed to die. The warrior snaps him out of it, concerned by his sudden silence. A cold resolve settles in his eyes, the memories of betrayal fresh in his mind. He glances down, noticing the deep bleeding wounds on the warrior's leg. Despite his own confusion, he offers his back, ready to carry her to safety. She warns him of the long journey ahead, but he refuses to leave her behind. And with a sudden burst of speed, he takes off, leaving her screaming in his wake. Their path is blocked by a massive, seemingly impassable chasm. But for a man with a superpowered body, impassable is just a suggestion. He descends the cliff face with impossible agility, even snagging a snack on the way down. He lands without breaking stride, continuing his mad dash through the forest floor. His passenger, meanwhile, looks like she's seriously regretting her travel choices. The first taste of food in this new world is apparently a religious experience. He offers to share his snack, but she vehemently rejects his secondhand fruit. Finally, their destination comes into view, the Black Wolf tribe's settlement. The tribesmen can't believe their eyes, questioning how Attila could be alive. He stands before them, a living miracle to the people who thought him dead. And for Sato, this isn't just a village, it's a memory brought to life. This is the very settlement he designed, now a tangible, breathing reality. To see his creation thriving is a reward greater than any contract. But his moment of peace is shattered by a sudden, aggressive stomp. A young man stares in shock as Sato confronts him with silent intensity. The young man can only stare, his face a mask of pure disbelief. The crowd parts as a mountain of a man strides forward, calling Attila's name. Sato immediately recognizes the intimidating aura. This is Attila's father, Munzuk, the legendary chief of the Black Wolf tribe, and a man who looks like he eats rocks for breakfast. With a stern gaze, he puts his son on the spot in front of the entire village. Sato can only stammer out a panicked declaration of his return. But instead of a lecture, he gets a bone-crushing hug from his old man. The fearsome warrior breaks down in tears, overjoyed to see his son alive. Sato, meanwhile, looks like his soul is trying to leave his body. The chief celebrates, crediting a fortune teller for predicting this miracle. The chief is overcome with emotion, declaring the legend of the Black Wolf true. To celebrate his son's return, Munzuk calls for a massive feast. The entire village erupts in celebration, toasting to a figure called the Great Martial God King. Sato wastes no time, devouring the food with an almost religious fervor. A fellow tribesman offers him a drink and Sato happily accepts. But as he drinks, he watches the others, a thoughtful expression on his face. The celebration continues with the rhythmic beat of a massive drum. Warriors pound out a powerful rhythm, their bodies gleaming with sweat. A ritual dance begins, one that tells the story of their legendary god king. It's a tragic tale, recounting how this great king was ultimately slain by his enemies. But the legend says this king miraculously returned from death. The dancer reenacts the tale, a fierce warrior wielding a mighty axe. Her eyes burn with the same intensity as the hero she portrays. She spins into a whirlwind of motion, a dance of both grace and destruction. The air itself seems to bend to the power of her performance. Sweat beads on her brow, a testament to the dance's grueling demands. The story ends with the God King standing as the village's sole protector. The tribe erupts in cheers, their spirits lifted by the ancient tale. Even Sato is impressed, admitting this live-action version is pretty good. But as the celebration continues, he sits alone, his mind racing. He realizes that if this truly is his world, there must be a way out. An escape route he himself wrote into the story. The legendary Fairy Kingdom. It's the only place he would have put an exit, a classic author's back door. But his grand escape plan is interrupted by the call of a well-cooked meal. A heavy footstep signals the end of his quiet moment. A warrior approaches, having heard the tale of his forebear takedown. This is Bleeda, a gold belt warrior of the Black Wolf tribe, and he's clearly impressed. He declares that Attila has now earned his place among their elite ranks. Sato accepts the honor with a quiet, determined gratitude. He has officially become a gold belt warrior, one of the tribe's strongest. This title is not just an honor, it's a direct path to becoming the next chief. And for that very reason, this celebration is about to get complicated. Sato realizes this toast isn't just a welcome, it's an entry into a power struggle. But as he raises the mug, his heightened senses pick up a familiar, dangerous scent. It's a smell tied to a truth that only he, the author, could possibly know. The man who betrayed Attila questions his hesitation, a dark aura around him. Without a word, Sato pours the poisoned drink onto the ground, confirming his suspicion. He cuts straight to the point, challenging the traitor to a fight right then and there. The rival seems amused, mocking Sato's sudden burst of courage. He warns Sato not to get arrogant, dismissing his survival as a mere trick. The rival simply smirks, telling Sato to enjoy the feast for now. He tries to stop them, but Bleeda just waves a dismissive farewell. Sato can only watch as the traitor and his lackeys retreat into the night. He's left standing alone, surprised that his rival actually backed down. He realizes Bleeda is a coward, who only picks fights he's sure to win. Unable to gauge Sato's new power, Bleeda will surely try to kill him again. His mind flashes back to a simpler time, a young boy proudly showing his first kill. The memory brings a somber look to his face, a life that wasn't his. He remembers his father's praise, a promise of a great future. A memory of a proud father and his eager, wide-eyed son. He remembers his father, Munzuk, a man as bright and warm as the sun. But Sato never had a father, leaving him unsure how to act. He stands alone, lost in the unfamiliar feeling of paternal love. He can't help but wonder what his own life might have been like. He pictures the memory of a proud father and his triumphant son. Would he have ever received that kind of praise and affection? But his thoughts are cut short as Munzuk calls him over. The chief stands before him, ready to give him something important. He presents the mark of the Gold Belt Warrior, a legendary honor. His father beams with pride, knowing it's a title any warrior would die for. Munzuk eagerly pushes the belt into Sato's hands, telling him to put it on. But Sato has a problem. As a former novelist, he has no idea how to tie it. The result is a fashion disaster that screams, "I have no idea what I'm doing." Thinking fast, he makes up an excuse, claiming his hand is injured from the fight. His father immediately buys it, his face lighting up as he offers to help. Sato can only stare, completely caught off guard by this level of fatherly doting. The chief kneels, fondly recalling the first time he ever tied Attila's belt. With an expert's touch, the knot is tied, sealing his new status as a warrior. He looks up at his son with immense pride, acknowledging his long and difficult journey. For the first time, Sato feels a warmth he's never known, offering a genuine thanks. But Sato can only stare back, completely unequipped to handle this level of affection. His father tells him to show some joy, ruffling his hair with embarrassing enthusiasm. Munzuk is baffled by his son's modesty, roaring that this is an unheard-of accomplishment. The entire village echoes the sentiment, cheering for their young hero's return. Sato knows, however, that this honor wasn't earned by his own hands. He's living another man's life, reaping the rewards of another's struggle. But as he looks at the celebration, a small, genuine smile finally appears. For the first time in this world, he allows himself to feel truly happy. His father raises his mug high, proposing a toast to the warriors of the Black Wolf. And in a thunderous roar, the entire tribe joins him in celebration. For a guy who was just murdered twice, he admits this life isn't half bad. But the celebration is cut short as a mug hits the ground with a crash. Sato's eyes widen in shock, the festive mood instantly shattered. His father, Munzuk, suddenly collapses, writhing in unimaginable agony. Sato can only scream out as he watches the legendary chief fall. The fearsome warrior's face twists into a monstrous, inhuman visage. Without a second's hesitation, Sato rushes to his father's side. But his mind races. He knows the drink wasn't poisoned. He holds the chief, desperately calling out to the man he just met. A single agonizing question hangs in the air. Why? A guttural roar tears from Munzuk's throat, his face twisting into a demonic mask. Sato can only watch in horror, a terrible realization dawning in his eyes. A system window confirms it, a status ailment called Berserk. The chief lashes out blindly, a whirlwind of rage against his own people. The other warriors struggle to contain him, their faces grim with understanding. But Sato's mind races, realizing Bleda's plan was never this simple. The joyous celebration instantly turns into a scene of chaos and terror. Bleda isn't just targeting the chief, he's targeting everyone the chief cares about. The plan's true cruelty is revealed, to make Munzuk destroy his own village. A cold, burning fury settles over Sato's face. This is unforgivable. The chief is completely lost to the rage, his eyes burning with a demonic red light. Sato desperately tries to reach him, screaming for his father to break free, but his punch is stopped cold. Caught in an unbreakable iron grip, the Berserk chief retaliates with a brutal backhand, sending his son flying. The force of the blow sends a shockwave of pain through Sato's body. He realizes with dawning horror that his father can't hear him at all. The sheer, overwhelming power of the chief leaves him floored. So much for that family reunion. But the chief's power isn't just raw strength, it's something more primal. He summons the spirit of the Black Wolf, the tribe's legendary guardian, and now that legendary power is aimed directly at his own son. Sato is slammed into the earth, the ground itself cracking from the sheer force. He struggles to his feet, the pain a brutal reminder of the chief's power. He realizes his own strength is nothing compared to the Berserk warrior. Amidst the chaos, a young boy rushes to his fallen mother's side. He desperately tries to pull her up, begging her to stand, but she's too weak, telling him to save himself and leave her behind. The Berserk chief turns his attention to them, a new target in his sights. The mother can only scream, a final, desperate plea for her son to run. But the boy stands his ground, armed with nothing but a small blade. With tears of fear and determination, he vows to protect his mother no matter the cost. The Berserk chief brings his fist down, a blur of red, destructive energy. But Sato intercepts the blow, his own power flaring to meet the unstoppable force. He praises the boy's bravery, earning a grateful cry of his new name, Attila. He orders the other warriors to get the family to safety, taking charge of the chaos. The tribesmen quickly escort the mother and son away from the battlefield. Sato clenches his fist, a violet aura gathering as he prepares for a real fight. He meets the chief's next attack head-on, their fists colliding with explosive force. With a confident smirk, Sato declares that he's finally caught the rampaging chief. But he knows just stopping Munzuk is a laughably naive thought. And Munzuk proves him right, his demonic power surging to a whole new level. Sato's eyes widen in shock. The chief's speed is unbelievable. A blur of motion grazes his ear, a sharp sting of pain following. Blood trickles down his neck, a painful reminder of his father's power. Munzuk roars, his fist glowing with the fury of a sun-gone supernova. The blow connects, sending Sato flying with a brutal fatherly love tap. Spitting blood, he realizes there's no room for hesitation anymore. He catches the next punch, his grip like iron against the chief's wrist. A dark aura flares around him as he makes a grim decision. With cold resolve, he accepts that there is only one way this can end, because the man in front of him is no longer his father, but a monster. He parries the blow, but the chief's monstrous strength is relentless. A brutal right hook sends blood flying, rattling Sato to his core, but he answers back with a devastating blow of his own right to the jaw. The exchange leaves him reeling, the taste of iron filling his mouth. Refusing to back down, he gathers his power for another assault. But the chief's body begins to glow, revealing a new, terrifying power. Sato realizes with dawning horror that his attacks aren't even scratching him. Munzuk's eyes burn with demonic light as he prepares to end this. They trade blows in a blinding flurry, a maelstrom of father-son bonding, but the chief's overwhelming power drives him face first into the dirt. Sato lies broken in the crater, completely at the mercy of his father. The villagers can only watch in horror as their hero is beaten down. But even now, Sato refuses to stay down, pushing himself back up. A fire of pure defiance burns in his eyes, refusing to be extinguished. His mind flashes back to a lesson from his father about what it means to be a warrior. He knows the real Munzuk would never want this destruction. He thinks about what his father would do in this very situation. And with newfound resolve, he plants his feet ready to fight back. He decides to honor that memory, activating a skill called heroic strength. With a furious roar, Sato charges forward, ready to meet his father's rage with his own. He puts every ounce of his newfound power into a single desperate punch. The blow connects with enough force to rattle the chief's very soul. It even knocks a tooth clean out, sending it flying through the air. The Berserk warrior is sent crashing backwards, finally put on the defensive. But the effort leaves Sato with nothing left in the tank. His body gives out, the borrowed strength completely spent. He collapses to the ground, wondering if this is truly his limit. The chief rises, his fiery aura undiminished, turning towards his fallen son. Sato can only watch, completely helpless as the monster approaches. But something has changed. The chief looks down, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. He looks down at his own hands, the demonic rage finally receding from his eyes. Sato can only watch from the ground, wondering if his desperate punch actually worked. And just like that, a system window confirms it. Munzuk has recovered from the berserk state. The impossible has happened. The chief has been brought back from the brink. But as Sato tries to process this, he spots something glinting in the dirt nearby. It's a small needle, the true source of the poison that drove his father mad. Munzuk, now himself again, rushes to his son's side, his voice filled with panic. Sato reassures him, though his body is screaming in protest. So much for a quiet family reunion. But just as relief sets in, Munzuk cries out, his body seizing in agony. The legendary chief collapses, his face a mask of unbearable pain. The sound of thundering hooves cuts through the chaotic night. And just like that, Bleda and his men are already making their escape. Elsewhere, a cloaked figure notes that the berserk needle wasn't meant to be removed. But Sato's desperate punch did the impossible, dislodging the cursed item. The needle was forced out, a development no one could have predicted. Bleda whips his horse, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He vows that Sato's victory is temporary. Everything will end tomorrow. He and his men ride hard for the northern cave, their hidden sanctuary. Standing before the entrance, Bleda gives the order to head inside. With a torch in hand, the traitor leads his men into the darkness to plot his revenge. Bleda and his men freeze in terror, finding their sanctuary is already occupied. A monstrous voice echoes through the cave, demanding the return of its child. Heavy, enchanted chains strain against an unseen, immense power. They've stumbled upon a massive chained beast, its eyes burning with maternal rage. This is the tribe's divine beast, the legendary calamity of the forest. But Bleda is unfazed, holding a ball of fire as he addresses the creature. The calamity roars back in defiance, refusing to be intimidated by these cowards. So Bleda reveals his leverage, a tiny, captured cub held by one of his men. The little creature can only cry, proving Bleda's villainy has no lower limit. The mother beast thrashes against her bonds, screaming for them to stop this cruelty. With the beast's child as a hostage, Bleda gives his final, cruel command. The calamity can only roar in helpless fury, forced to obey the traitor's will. But back in the village, a familiar fire of defiance ignites in Sato's eyes. He wakes up in a bed, the morning sun a stark contrast to the night's chaos. A splitting headache is the first reminder of his brutal father-son beatdown. He sits up, realizing he must have been unconscious for quite some time. But he's not alone. His father, Munzuk, is awake in the bed right next to him. Sato's concern immediately shifts to the chief, asking if he's all right. Munzuk reassures him, admitting he's paralyzed but otherwise fine. So, just a little paralyzed. With a heavy heart, the chief apologizes for the destruction he caused while berserk. Sato vehemently defends his father, placing all the blame on the traitor Bleda, but Munzuk refuses to accept the excuse. Consumed by guilt over his failure to protect his people, he declares himself unfit to be chief, a statement that shocks Sato to his core. Sato realizes this is exactly what Bleda wanted, to break the chief's spirit completely. But the chief's resolve is firm, insisting that his actions were unforgivable. Their serious conversation is interrupted by a sudden commotion just outside the room. The door flies open as a tidal wave of villagers comes pouring in. Both father and son can only stare, completely baffled by the chaotic scene. It turns out this is a get-well party, and the villagers are already arguing over the details. Apparently, bringing booze to a paralyzed man's bedside is a point of serious contention. A woman steps forward, declaring that thanks to Sato, the village is safe. She reminds the chief of the countless times he has protected them all. With the villagers behind her, she affirms their unwavering faith in their leader. Munzuk listens, his head bowed, the weight of their loyalty hitting him hard. Through tears, she begs him to believe in them as much as they believe in him. The proud chief can no longer hold back his emotions, overwhelmed by their forgiveness. The other warriors join in, their fists raised in a powerful show of unity. All Munzuk can manage is a choked, tearful thank you to his people. Sato watches the scene unfold, a quiet, satisfied smile on his face. But the tender moment is broken by a sharp, determined footstep. A warrior bursts in, his voice cutting through the fragile peace of the room. He delivers the horrifying news. The calamity of the forest is attacking the village. Sato's eyes widen. He knows exactly why the beast is on a rampage. Outside, the once thriving settlement is already being consumed by fire. The massive divine beast tears through the village, a whirlwind of white-hot rage. This was once a legendary guardian, a protector of the Black Wolf tribe. A creature the people once revered, now turned into an instrument of destruction. Munzuk roars in disbelief, his face a mask of pure, helpless fury. He tries to force himself up, but his paralyzed body betrays his warrior spirit. Without hesitation, Sato rises to his feet, ready to go as his father begs him to wait. Munzuk cries out in protest, calling the plan utter madness for a mere human. But Sato ignores him, calmly announcing he's borrowing his father's legendary axe. With the weapon slung over his shoulder, he vows to return it in one piece. His eyes burn with golden light as he promises to come back alive. The chief can only watch, his face a mixture of terror and disbelief. Sato steps outside into a vision of hell, his village consumed by fire. The calamity's roar echoes through the inferno, a sound of pure, unbridled rage. He arrives on the scene just as a villager points out the monster's location. And for the first time, he gets a good look at the beast. Yeah, it's huge. But before he can act, a group of warriors calls him out for being late to the party. But a familiar, treacherous voice cuts through the chaos, mocking his injured state. Sato roars out the traitor's name, his eyes burning with pure, unadulterated hatred. Bleda simply smirks, calling him naive and just as foolish as his father. But Sato is done talking, hefting the massive axe and demanding a fight. Bleda seems impressed, sarcastically praising the reincarnation of the God King. But he reveals that Sato's opponent isn't him, summoning his real weapon. A massive, shadowy paw cuts through the air with terrifying speed. Sato braces himself, raising the axe to meet the devastating blow head-on. And there it is, Bleda, standing before the calamity, directing its every move. Sato can only stare in disbelief, demanding to know how he's controlling a divine beast. Bleda boasts that making an opponent kneel is a simple matter. All you have to do is take away the one thing they hold most dear. Sato can only listen, his grip tightening on his father's axe. The traitor declares that anything worth protecting is nothing but a weakness. But Sato has heard enough, asking if those were the traitor's final words. Bleda just scoffs, turning the question right back at him. With a final command, he unleashes the calamity of the forest. Sato roars back, swinging the massive axe to meet the charge head-on. The beast's paw descends, a blur of claws and destructive energy. He meets the blow, the force of the impact shaking the very ground. Sato grits his teeth, realizing he's in a seriously bad spot. He knows if he takes that hit directly, he'll be nothing but a red smear on the ground. The calamity roars, bringing its full weight down in a devastating strike. The force of the blow sends Sato skidding backwards across the burning village. He digs his heels in, using the axe to slow his momentum and avoid being crushed. A nearby villager can only watch, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. Sato realizes with dawning horror that the beast is impossibly fast for its size. Worse yet, its hide is like stone, making his axe practically useless. The monster lets out a deafening roar, its breath hot enough to singe the air. But as he stares into its maw, Sato's eyes lock onto its one visible weakness. A sudden realization hits him. You can't cut rock, but you can drive a stake through it. The simple logic clicks into place, a new strategy forming in his mind. If he can't cut through the beast's hide, he'll just have to pierce it instead. He flips the massive axe, aiming the sharp, pointed end forward like a javelin. With a guttural roar, he charges forward, ready to test his new theory. He launches himself into the air, a human missile aimed at the beast's one weak point. The makeshift spear finds its mark, tearing into the soft flesh of the monster's mouth. But he's not done yet, using the momentum to swing himself into a new position. The calamity roars in agony, its rage now focused entirely on the man in its mouth. He lands on its head, bringing the axe down with every ounce of his strength. He becomes a whirlwind of motion, spinning with the axe held high. With a final, desperate roar, he brings the weapon down with all his might. The second axe slams into the first, a makeshift hammer and nail. The blade is driven deeper, a brutal but undeniably effective solution. The villagers can only stare, baffled by his axe-on-axe technique. The calamity stumbles back, the force of the blow rattling its very core. A final, agonized roar tears from its throat as the pain overwhelms it, and with a ground-shaking thud, the legendary beast finally falls. In the chaos, the traitor's henchman drops the cub, his leverage now gone. The mother is reunited with her child, her rage replaced by gentle relief. Blada's face twists in fury, his master plan completely falling apart. With his trump card defeated, he orders his men to attack Sato directly. His archers draw their bows, ready to unleash a volley on his command. A hail of arrows rains down on Sato, who stands his ground amidst the flames. But our boy's eyes narrow, his focus absolute as he prepares to counter. In a blur of golden light, he deflects every single arrow with impossible speed. Blada's men can only stare in horror, realizing they're not fighting a man, but a monster. Sato moves in a flash, his axe delivering a swift and brutal end to the first henchman. He becomes a whirlwind of death, cutting through the traitors with merciless efficiency. With a powerful kick, he sends another of Blada's men flying, his assault relentless. He moves like a storm of golden light, his father's axe a blur of motion. With the grunts out of the way, Sato declares this is the end, calling Blada out directly. The traitor raises his own axe, a sinister purple energy swirling around him. His grip tightens, channeling his dark power into the weapon. With a look of pure malice, Blada accepts the challenge, daring Sato to come at him. The two warriors face off across the burning battlefield, a silent, deadly standoff. The villagers watch in confusion, wondering why neither of them is making a move. But one of them understands the real battle has already begun. This is it, a final duel that will decide the very fate of the Black Wolf tribe. Sato's eyes narrow, his body coiled like a spring, ready to unleash hell. Blada raises his axe, his eyes glowing with a sinister purple light. With a single, earth-shattering step, the traitor closes the distance instantly. Sato can only watch in shock as Blada vanishes into thin air. He reappears in a flash, his axe already descending for the kill. The purple blade connects, drawing first blood from Sato's shoulder. Sato is thrown back, the force of the blow staggering him completely. He can't understand it. Blada's movements are impossibly fast. The traitor doesn't give him time to think, launching another assault. Sato realizes with dawning horror that he can't dodge this next attack. And just like that, fresh blood stains the battlefield. Blada mocks him, calling him a fool for thinking brute force alone could win. The traitor boasts that he's more than used to dealing with clumsy strength. Sato is forced on the defensive, barely blocking the relentless flurry of strikes. He struggles to keep up, his own axe feeling slow and heavy in his hands. He grits his teeth, realizing he doesn't even have an opening to counterattack. Blada offers some backhanded praise, impressed by his high-speed defense. But his eyes narrow, a clear sign that he's about to end this little game. In a flash of purple light, the traitor vanishes from sight completely. Sato's eyes widen in shock, unable to track the impossible speed. Blada reappears in a blur, roaring that he will be the one to claim victory. Blada descends like a phantom, his purple axe aimed for the final blow. Sato admits that Blada is his superior in both skill and experience. But after surviving a beatdown from his berserk father, this is nothing. The traitor's speed seems almost slow compared to the chief's raw power. With a surge of power, Sato tightens his grip, ready to counter. He meets the attack head-on, a clash of gold and purple light. The force of the blow sends a shockwave through Blada's body. The traitor is sent tumbling backwards, his perfect assault shattered. The villagers erupt in cheers, apparently new to how final battles work. But Sato knows better, his eyes fixed on his opponent, ready for the next move. Blada lies on the ground, seemingly defeated by Sato's overwhelming power. But instead of crying out in pain, the traitor begins to laugh maniacally. Sato demands to know what's so funny, his patience completely exhausted. The traitor simply says he was waiting for his real plan to take effect. He reveals a horrifying truth. His axe was coated in berserk poison. And Sato knows exactly what happens when that poison enters your system. The realization hits him like a physical blow, his face twisting in fury. Blada's final twisted plan is to make Sato destroy his own village. A dark energy begins to creep in as Sato fights the poison's influence. He can feel it taking hold, his very blood turning against him. His eyes flare with a terrifying light as he fights the poison's grip. He screams in agony, his body racked with convulsions as the dark energy takes hold. The villagers can only watch in horror as their hero begins to transform. Blada roars in triumph, wishing a beast's death upon his fallen rival. The last trace of humanity vanishes, replaced by the feral eyes of a monster. His mind reels, his body burning as the poison rewrites his very being. But a voice cuts through the chaos, a familiar beast calling him by his new name. The calamity reveals he now harbors the soul of the sovereign, which is news to everyone. It explains that he can hear its voice because he's now more beast than man. The divine beast opens its jaws, offering a gift to its newfound kin. Sato can only stare, his mind reeling from the divine beast's words. From the beast's mouth, a legendary sword emerges, pulsing with purple energy. It's the divine sword of the God King, a weapon named Mihyul. He takes the blade, its immense power flowing through his very veins. The calamity roars, telling him to fight for the soul of his tribe. And in that moment, a new fire ignites in Sato's eyes. He remembers his purpose, to fight for those he must protect. A system window confirms it. The sword nullifies all status ailments. So much for Bleda's poison plan. The berserk poison fades, replaced by the pure power of the divine weapon. The villagers can only watch, completely baffled by this sudden, miraculous recovery. Bleda can only stare in disbelief, wondering why his poison isn't working. But Sato just calls out his name, his new power radiating with the calamity's spirit. The trader's confidence shatters, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. With a confident smirk, Sato declares that it's time to end this, once and for all. He moves with impossible speed, closing the distance in the blink of an eye. Before Bleda can even react, a flash of steel draws first blood across his face. The divine sword cuts through the air, a blur of merciless purple light. He doesn't give the traitor a moment to breathe, pressing his assault with blinding speed. Bleda can only scream in denial because apparently divine sword wasn't part of his plan. The blade finds its mark again, tearing through flesh with righteous fury. The divine sword sings through the air, a final beautiful note of destruction. Bleda can only stare, recognizing the legendary blade that has sealed his fate. The sword finds its home, tearing through the traitor with the calamity's righteous fury. A spectral wolf erupts from the blow, the very soul of the tribe delivering judgment. And with a final, shuddering breath, Bleda collapses, his ambition bleeding out into the dirt. His last thought is one of bitter irony. Attila was chosen by the very beast he tried to control. And in his final moments, his life flashes before his eyes, a tale of bitter resentment. He was always the second son, forever living in the shadow of his talented older brother. While his brother was praised and admired, Bleda was left to fester in jealousy. So, standard villain backstory stuff. His desperate attempts to prove himself only ever ended in pain and humiliation. He remembers wanting to master a dangerous power, one that pushed him to his very limits. But his ambition was born from a time when he fought alongside his older brother. Together, they were hailed as the tribe's strongest warriors, an unstoppable duo. His brother was always the reckless one, charging into the fray with a wild grin. Bleda could only watch in frustration as his brother took on entire armies by himself. The man was a true force of nature, a whirlwind of destruction on the battlefield. But in one fateful battle, his brother's recklessness finally caught up to him. Bleda screams a warning, rushing to his brother's side as the tide suddenly turns. An enemy's blade cuts through the chaos, landing a devastating, unexpected blow. And Bleda could only watch in horror as his brother was cut down before his very eyes. He remembers being wounded in battle, a sacrifice made to protect his brother. His brother was a legendary warrior, a man with a wild mane of white hair. After the battle, Bleda demanded to know why he was being sidelined from the next fight. But his brother could only offer a somber, regretful apology. He was told his injuries were too severe, his time on the battlefield was over. Instead of being praised for his sacrifice, he felt his place had been stolen. And as a new war began, his brother left to fight without him. Bleda was left behind, his belief in their partnership completely shattered. In his final moments, he screams that no one could possibly understand his pain. He dies convinced that Munzuk and the tribe were the true villains all along. In his final moments, Bleda roars that his pain is why he'll destroy everything. He screams for the world to get out of his way, a final desperate cry of rage. But Sato has heard enough, cutting off the villain's final monologue. With burning eyes, he tells the traitor to take responsibility for his own choices. He won't let a man like Bleda hurt his family or comrades ever again. With a final, decisive step, he prepares to deliver the final judgment. He roars out his vow, a promise to protect the people he now calls his own. Bleda can only scream in defiance, his purple energy flaring one last time. But Sato's golden roar of justice completely overwhelms him, and in a final clash of wills, the traitor's ambition is finally extinguished. With his last breath, Bleda can only think of his lost brother. Sato's final blow lands, ending the traitor's ambition in a flash of light. The villain collapses, his life and his twisted plans bleeding out. He finally admits he knew his brother was only trying to protect him. But all he ever wanted was to hear they could fight together again. Sato lands with a heavy thud, the ground itself marking his victory. He stands over the fallen traitor, the silence of the battlefield deafening. His eyes are cold and steady, the weight of his actions settling in. The villagers finally process the scene, their disbelief turning into cheers. A single cry cuts through the chaos, declaring Attila the victor. With the traitor defeated, a fragile peace returns to the Black Wolf village. But Sato has already made his choice. He's leaving to find the fairy kingdom. He stands ready to depart, offering a final confident farewell to his new family. The villagers protest, begging their new hero to stay and become their next chief. But Munzuk steps in, bluntly stating that Attila is not fit for the role. The tribe immediately refutes him, insisting Sato is the perfect choice for their leader. With a grin, the chief decides to prove his point with a little demonstration. The villagers can only stare, completely confused by this sudden turn of events. Munzuk grips his axe, ready to deliver some tough love parenting. He unleashes a devastating swing, ready to show them what a real chief looks like. Sato can only stare in disbelief, wondering what his father is doing. The axe blade stops just inches from his face, a brutal test of his resolve. He demands to know what his father is thinking, his voice laced with panic. But Munzuk simply praises his splendid reaction to the sudden attack. He critiques Sato's stance, noting it's still soft and full of openings. Sato is left completely speechless by this very hands-on performance review. The chief acknowledges that his son clearly possesses a special power. He declares that being entrusted with the divine sword is proof of a great destiny. He looks his son in the eye, calling him by his true name, Attila. And he offers one final lesson. A person's soul is tested in the face of despair. Munzuk explains that Bleda's downfall came when he lost the radiance of his soul. He tells his son to forge his mind, body, and spirit like tempered steel. Sato listens, the weight of his father's words settling in his gaze. The final lesson is simple: never lose that inner light no matter what happens. In the quiet morning light, Sato finally accepts this man as his father. With a confident smile, he promises to return and begins his journey. But he's stopped by a familiar face, the warrior he saved, whose name is Ireku. She tells him she's making a promise, her words hanging in the air. Before he can react, she lunges forward, grabbing him from behind. She gives him a crushing farewell hug, calling him her good luck charm. Sato is left completely flustered by her very forward declaration. She gives him a parting gift, a charm made from the Calamity's own fang. Ireku smiles, certain that the divine beast's power will protect him. He accepts the token with a quiet, genuine word of thanks. But his father decides on a much less dignified exit, literally carrying him away. And with a final wave, Sato leaves the Black Wolf tribe behind. His journey begins, and his first night is spent alone by a small campfire. But his focus is entirely on the perfectly roasted meat sizzling over the flames. After all that fighting, a good meal is the only reward that matters. And with a happy grin, he finally digs in, ready for the road ahead. But his well-deserved meal is interrupted by the unmistakable sound of a hungry stomach. He peers into the darkness, a nervous sweat breaking on his brow. His expression shifts to one of pure, unadulterated annoyance. With a sigh, he calls out to the woods, asking how long he's been followed. And the culprit is none other than the Calamity's cub, looking pitifully hungry. Sato repeats his question, clearly not in the mood for a travel companion. The little beast peeks out from behind a tree, trying its best to look innocent. He gives it a firm order, telling the little creature to go home. But the cub takes this as an invitation, happily prancing towards the campfire. Sato tries to reason with it, insisting he can't take it along on his journey. The cub's purr is less of a purr and more of a rumbling engine. With a sigh, Sato offers up his dinner, telling the creature to eat and leave. But the cub latches onto his arm, refusing to let go of its new food source. A scream of pure frustration rips through the quiet forest night. The little beast isn't just eating the meat, it's trying to devour his entire arm. Sato stares in horror at his hand, now completely covered in divine beast drool. He decides this savage creature is not his problem and makes a break for it. But he stops, turning back with a sudden uneasy feeling. The cub promptly throws up, and Sato's reaction is nothing short of primal terror. He flees in panic, leaving the dejected little beast all alone in the woods. The cub offers him its regurgitated meal, but Sato vehemently refuses the gift. But his escape was short-lived, and now he's stuck with a very clingy travel companion. He stares into the night, trying to understand the little beast's sudden attachment. And as he looks down at the sleeping cub, a realization finally dawns on him. It's not him the cub is attached to, but the scent of its mother on the charm he carries. He remembers the cub's capture, a helpless pawn in Bleda's cruel and twisted game. He recalls the Calamity's desperate fight, a mother's love against impossible odds. The little beast sleeps soundly, completely unaware of the danger it represents. So much for a solo trip. Sato can only sigh, realizing this troublesome situation has no easy solution. He watches the sleeping cub, a bead of sweat rolling down his face. His journey just got a lot more complicated. He smirks, recalling the Calamity's self-important role as the sword's guardian. He muses aloud that this little creature is a guardian beast too in its own way. The cub just sits there looking adorably clueless and drooling a little, but when it looks again, Sato has vanished, leaving only an impression in the grass. The little beast panics, scrambling around in a desperate search for its new friend. It waddles through the forest, clearly distraught at being abandoned so suddenly. Finally, it stops in a clearing, completely and utterly alone in the vast woods. The cub's face crumples, its eyes welling up with heartbreaking tears. Well, that's just emotional warfare. But a familiar pair of boots steps back into the clearing, unable to stay away. Sato returns, holding up the fang charm and asking if this is what it's after. He explains that he can't give the charm back, but he has another idea. Using a strip of cloth, he fashions a small bow around the cub's neck. He offers the makeshift collar as a gift, a sign that it can stay. With his new companion in tow, Sato finally continues his journey. He gives one last warning, telling the little beast to keep up or be left behind. The cub's eyes well up with pure, unadulterated joy at the invitation. It scrambles forward, its tiny paws kicking up dust in its excitement. The little creature waddles as fast as it can, determined not to be abandoned again. It looks up at its new companion, a happy, panting grin on its face. Sato yells back a warning, already settling into his new role as a reluctant dad. With a grin, Sato leads his new companion on a mad dash through the forest. Their journey takes them through a winding mountain pass, a long road ahead. But they're not alone. A single, watchful eye follows their every move from above. Elsewhere, a woman in red observes them through a scrying orb, a crow on her shoulder. She's intrigued by the warrior who could break the Berserk Needle's curse. This is the witch, Batri Elizabeth, and she wonders where this man has been hiding. With a dangerous smile, she admits her interest has been officially piqued. Her familiar takes to the sky, its mission of observation now complete. But its spying career comes to an abrupt end as Sato announces their arrival. Below them lies their first destination, a bustling town, the next step on his path. Their first stop is a local tavern, a place for rest and information. The Calamity's cub, meanwhile, is already devouring a steamed bun. Sato looks on in horror, worried the little beast is going to choke. But his attention is quickly stolen by the arrival of his own meal. A mountain of perfectly steamed buns, a welcome sight for a weary traveler. Between bites, he asks the bartender for any info on the Fairy Kingdom. But the man has never heard of it, a dead end Sato was expecting. He recalls the little he wrote, a sanctuary, a floating island in the North Sea. Frustrated, he realizes he never fleshed out the details in his own novel. The bartender is just shocked he finished the food, while Sato regrets his lazy writing. He remembers that to reach the North Sea, he must first pass through a land of giants and dragons. A gauntlet of terrifying monsters stands between him and his goal. The sheer scale of the task gives him a splitting headache. So much for a simple escape plan. But his question about the Fairy Kingdom has drawn some unwanted attention. A group of local drunks find his quest absolutely hilarious. Sato's expression remains cold, completely unimpressed by their mockery. One of them declares that the Fairy Kingdom is nothing but a childish fantasy. He tells our boy to stop dreaming and face the real world, calling him an idiot. With the cub on his shoulder, Sato calmly tells him to mind his own business. The drunkard's bravado vanishes, now telling Sato to just hurry up and leave. The drunkard threatens to turn the cub into a hot pot, which is a terrible idea. The little beast proves him wrong, sinking its teeth right into his finger. Sato tries to calm his companion, dismissing the man as a harmless drunk. But another man sends the drunk flying with a powerful, dismissive kick. A new challenger approaches, his presence silencing the entire tavern. This is Otto, a mercenary leader who clearly has a problem with Sato's presence. The bartender panics, recognizing the dangerous newcomer immediately. He desperately urges Sato to leave before things get any worse. He clarifies that this isn't just any knight, but the infamous ogre blade Otto. Sato's interest is piqued, an outlaw who was once a knight. Otto smirks, dismissing Sato's question with arrogant silence. With a single command, he unleashes his men, turning the tavern into a battlefield. But Sato's eyes narrow, a golden fire igniting as he prepares for the assault. In the blink of an eye, the entire mercenary crew is on the floor, completely neutralized. Otto can only stare in utter disbelief, his confidence completely shattered. He demands to know just who this mysterious warrior could possibly be. With a wild grin, Sato gives him the most confusing answer possible. He's the original author. He tears off his cloak, revealing his chiseled physique and declaring the warm-up is over. Otto's tough guy facade crumbles into pure, unadulterated panic. So much for the ogre blade. Sato finishes the job with a smile, claiming it was all just self-defense. The bartender can only stare, completely shocked by the sudden turn of events. Sato puts on an innocent face, claiming it was all just self-defense. But instead of anger, the bartender grabs his hands, overcome with gratitude. Sato looks at a wanted poster, realizing he just took down a group of criminals. The bartender explains the men were wanted, a plague on the entire town. But Sato's eyes narrow, questioning why the bounty demands they be taken alive. The man whispers that it's likely to draft them into an impending war. He explains there are rumors of a conflict and their side is short on soldiers. A local baron is gathering anyone with fighting ability, even wanted criminals. A greedy grin spreads across Sato's face, because war means opportunity, and opportunity means cash. The bartender's face twists in panic, realizing what Sato is planning. And so, Sato takes his captured criminals straight to the Lord's manor. He stands before the local lord, the captured mercenaries kneeling at his feet. The man, Lord Bertrand, asks if he's the one trading bandits for a warhorse. Sato confirms his identity with a simple, respectful nod. But he adds with a grin that he's also here to collect the bounty. Business is business, after all. The Lord is immediately on the defensive, questioning Sato's bold assumptions. But Sato just smiles, calmly asking if the Lord isn't preparing for war. The Lord roars in outrage, demanding to know the source of this information. Sato lays his cards on the table, revealing he knows all about the coming war. He explains that the lack of bandits or even a town watch proves his point. Lord Bertrand can only sweat, completely caught in his own scheme. Sato presses further, noting the Lord wanted the bandits alive for the coming conflict. He then lays on the flattery, praising the Lord's legendary reputation. The old man's stern facade cracks, a blush creeping onto his cheeks. The Lord preens, completely won over by the praise. Apparently egos are easy to stroke. Sato feigns humility, offering his services while knowing it's all a lie. Convinced of his own importance, the Lord agrees that a reward is well-deserved. He offers 10 gold coins and a warhorse, a deal Sato happily accepts. But just as the deal is struck, the Lord adds a single ominous condition. Sato's eyes narrow, sensing the inevitable catch in the Lord's offer. The Lord reveals his price. Sato and the mercenaries must join his army. The captured mercenaries are less than thrilled about their new career path. But for Sato, this was the plan all along, a confident smirk on his face. He knows that to find what he's looking for, he has to join the war, because this conflict is the only way to draw out a very specific person. A man with silver hair and a reputation that precedes him. A warrior so feared his enemies call him the god of death. This is his chance to finally meet Charles Einhard, the protagonist of his story. Because Charles is the only one who knows the way to the fairy kingdom. And so Sato finds himself in the service of Lord Bertrand, a new soldier in a coming war. His first stop is the dungeon, where Otto is already begging his new boss for a way out. The rest of the mercenaries look on, clearly regretting their life choices. Otto screams in desperation, unable to accept his new role as a conscripted soldier, but Sato just tells him to quiet down, casually revealing he's only 16 years old. The former ogre blade is left completely speechless by this revelation. Sato quickly reestablishes the chain of command with a single chilling threat. Otto tries to pin the blame on him, but Sato reminds them they were caught red-handed. He offers some simple advice. Join the fight, and they might just survive. The weight of his words finally sinks in, leaving the mercenary leader defeated and silent. Unwilling to accept his fate, Otto challenges Sato to a one-on-one duel. Sato racks his brain, vaguely recalling a rule like that from his own novel. It's a formal tradition among knights, a one-on-one battle known as a joust, a high-stakes duel where two warriors put everything on the line. And while the specific rules may vary, one thing is always true. The winner takes all, their victory absolute and unquestioned. And the loser is left with nothing but shame and defeat. Otto reveals he was once a knight, believing he has a chance in a proper joust. Sato listens, completely unimpressed, while his companion looks ready for a nap. But Sato knows this man is just a mob character, fated to die an insignificant death. He realizes his presence is already starting to change the history he wrote. His actions are creating ripples, altering the flow of the entire war. But he agrees, needing Otto alive to drag another mercenary group into the conflict. The terms are set. If Otto wins, his men go free. If he loses, they all fight. With a confident grin, Sato officially accepts the challenge. Even his tiny companion seems to be cheering him on, so supportive. The other mercenaries roar their support, their lives hanging on this one fight. Otto steels himself, ready to fight for his and his men's freedom. But Sato just looks on, completely unfazed by the high-stakes gamble. 10 days later, the stage is set for their fateful duel. A massive coliseum roars with anticipation as the two warriors take their positions. An announcer in a rather flamboyant outfit welcomes the crowd to the main event. Otto's men cheer wildly, their hopes for freedom riding on their leader's victory. Even Lord Bertrand watches from the stands, his expression grim and unreadable. The announcer declares this a battle where everything is on the line. No pressure, guys. The rules are simple. 2 knights will face each other with lances at the ready. On command, they will charge forward with everything they have. Through the slit of his helmet, Otto's eyes are filled with grim determination. But Sato's gaze is just as steady, completely unfazed by the spectacle. The goal is to land a single decisive blow, shattering armor and will alike. The announcer declares the only rule that matters. The first to unhorse their opponent is the victor. In this arena, social status and past titles mean absolutely nothing. This is the joust, a battle where the strong take everything from the weak. The announcer plays to the roaring crowd, building the tension for the coming clash. With a final, determined glare, Sato prepares for the signal to begin. The announcer throws his hands out, officially calling the 2 knights to the field. The heavy thud of hooves on stone echoes through the Colosseum. Otto enters the arena, his reputation as the ogre blade on the line. But his own men scream for his death, clearly not fans of his leadership. And watching from the crowd, the witch Battery Elizabeth notes how hated the man truly is. Her companion is left completely flustered by her sudden appearance. She simply puts a finger to her lips, enjoying the silent chaos she's caused. She admits she doesn't care about the politics. She's just here to see little Attila. And just like that, the entire section of the crowd is completely smitten. So much for tough guys. But the announcer quickly moves on, calling for the next challenger from the west. Sato enters the arena, his legend already growing as the warrior who captured a mercenary corps alone. He eyes the lance in his hand, a weapon he's clearly not accustomed to. In the stands, Otto's men scream for their captain to win, their lives hanging in the balance. Even Otto seems embarrassed by their very public, very desperate display of support. The 2 warriors finally face each other, and Sato calls out his opponent's name. Sato offers a backhanded compliment, admitting the armor doesn't look half bad, but Otto just smirks, telling him to enjoy his confidence while it lasts. The announcer strikes a pose, declaring the moment everyone has been waiting for has arrived. It's Attila of the Black Wolf tribe versus Otto, the infamous demon sword. With a final dramatic flourish, he gives the signal for the duel to begin. He thanks the roaring crowd for their patience, his face a mask of pure showmanship. The introductions echo through the arena, pitting the barbarian against the former knight. A red flag drops, and with it, the battle is officially underway. The 2 warriors charge, their horses thundering across the stone floor in a blur of motion. Otto's eyes are filled with grim resolve, convinced that victory is within his grasp. Otto puts all his faith into this one decisive strike. He's certain the longer reach of his lance will guarantee his victory. But Sato just watches the incoming weapon with a cold, steady gaze. And in a move that defies all logic, he simply catches the lance mid-charge. Otto's face twists into a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. The crowd screams in disbelief, wondering if he caught it with his bare hands. With a smirk, Sato snaps the tip off, ready to return the favor. So much for the rules of jousting. The former knight can only stare, the cold sweat of terror on his brow. A new skill activates, one that's perfect for this very situation. And with a feral grin, Sato unleashes his own high-speed projectile. Otto's eyes widen in pure, unadulterated terror. The broken tip flies like a bullet, a golden streak of improvised justice. It slams into Otto's chest, shattering his armor and his confidence. The former knight is sent crashing to the ground, his joust officially over. From the stands, the witch Battery. Elizabeth lets out a soft, amused chuckle. She recognizes his power, confirming he's a true berserker. The announcer declares Sato the winner, who seems to think lances aren't so bad after all. But the fight isn't over, as the announcer calls for the second round. Otto grips a mace, his arm still bleeding from that first devastating hit. The reality of his situation finally sinks in, his bravado replaced by sheer panic. The 2 warriors charge, ready for the second and final round. Sato grits his teeth, vowing to end this by knocking Otto off his horse. He urges his horse forward, a blur of motion as he closes the distance. Otto meets the charge, his face a mask of desperate determination. But his men can only scream in horror as their captain makes a fatal error. Otto's mace spins wildly, a golden light flaring from its core. The former knight's eyes widen. a bead of sweat tracing his terror. Because from the stands, a single elegant finger snap changes everything. The witch Bhatri. Elizabeth smirks, deciding to add a little chaos to the duel. So much for a fair fight. A massive dome of purple energy erupts, trapping the two warriors in a magical arena. The entire crowd, including the cub, can only watch in utter disbelief. But while Otto panics, Sato just grins, ready for a real fight. From the stands, Lord Bertrand's eyes narrow, sensing the shift in the battle. The announcer, however, seems to think this is all part of the show. Suddenly, Sato's horse begins to thrash wildly, completely out of his control. He realizes instantly that this is no accident. He can feel the faint trace of magic. His eyes scan the arena, searching for the magic user hidden in the crowd. And the witch Bhatri Elizabeth just smiles, enjoying the chaos she's sown. Otto's men can only watch in confusion as their opponent's horse goes berserk. But Otto sees this as a gift from the gods, his one and only chance to win. He swings his mace with everything he has, aiming to end this now. But Sato grits his teeth, refusing to be thrown by some cheap magic trick. Otto realizes he missed, but his desperation fuels a second, frantic attempt. But our boy just gets a brilliant and frankly terrifying idea. With his own horse out of commission, he simply decides to borrow another one. Otto can only stare, his brain completely failing to process the situation. In a flash, Sato lands right behind him, turning this duel into a tandem ride. He grabs the former knight, his expression screaming, "Surprise road trip!" The crowd can only watch in awe as he hijacks his opponent's horse mid-joust. Even the announcer is at a loss, wondering if there's a rulebook for this kind of chaos. From the stands, Lord Bertrand can only shake his head, unimpressed by this circus. With Otto in a chokehold, Sato declares this second round officially his. The horse continues its mad dash, now carrying two very unwilling passengers. Sato holds on tight, his impromptu equestrian show far from over. But his frustration boils over as the horse continues its magical rampage. Deciding he's had enough, Sato leaps from the horse with incredible agility. He sends Otto flying, the former knight crashing hard onto the stone floor. Otto's men scream in panic, realizing their captain is in serious trouble. Because Sato's original berserk horse is now charging straight for the fallen knight. But a heavy foot plants itself on the ground, ready to intervene. From the stands, the witch Bhatri Elizabeth watches with a calm, calculating interest. Sato stands over the fallen Otto, a silent guardian against the rampaging horse. With a single commanding glare, he orders the berserk beast to stop in its tracks. And just like that, the horse's magical rage is replaced by pure, unadulterated terror. It turns tail and flees, apparently deciding Sato is the scarier of its two options. Otto's men can only stare, their minds completely failing to process what just happened. The witch's smile widens, clearly impressed by this unexpected display of power. Sato calmly picks up the mace that his opponent dropped during the chaos. He stands over the fallen knight, the weapon a clear symbol of his victory. Otto can only look up, his defeat now absolute and utterly undeniable. With a confident grin, Sato asks if the former knight is ready for round 3. But Otto can only stare, the reality of his defeat finally sinking in. Instead of finishing him, Sato offers a hand, ready for a proper fight. The announcer roars, declaring it's time for the final, decisive round. From the stands, the witch smiles, impressed that Sato noticed her interference. He apologizes for the slight trouble, milking the chaos for all it's worth. With a dramatic flourish, he announces the final round will be fought on foot. The rules are simple. There are no rules, and any weapon is allowed. With a final chop of his hand, the announcer signals the start of the battle. The two warriors clash instantly, a blur of steel and desperate motion. Sato swings his mace with a terrifying, almost inhuman power. Otto recognizes the sheer weight behind the attack, knowing one hit could be fatal. But he believes if he can just dodge this first strike, he'll find an opening. Sato leaps into the air, bringing the weapon down with earth-shattering force. The former knight can only grit his teeth as the golden arc descends. The mace slams into the stone floor, missing its target by a hair's breadth. Seeing his chance, Otto charges forward, convinced that victory is his. But Sato just grins, calling his opponent's desperate move completely naive. He pivots with impossible speed, catching Otto with a brutal backswing. The blow connects, and Otto realizes he's not fighting a man, but a monster. Sato stands over his fallen opponent, his aura radiating pure, untamed power. His eyes glow with a terrifying intensity, a silent promise of what's to come. From the stands, Otto's men can only scream in horror for their fallen captain. They beg for the fight to end, their bravado completely shattered by the display. But Otto stumbles to his feet, desperately trying to call a halt to the beatdown. The former knight grits his teeth, his pride warring with his sheer terror. His men plead with him to give up, knowing this fight is already lost. They finally surrender, willing to join the war if it means saving their leader. Their loyalty, it seems, finally kicks in when their boss is about to be turned into a pancake. Hearing their cries, Otto's resolve finally breaks, his defeat now absolute. But Otto can only laugh, moved by his men's loyalty even with his hands tied. Sato looks down, a grim understanding on his face as he listens to the defeated man. The small blade clatters to the ground, a final, quiet admission of his defeat. With the battle over, Sato stands as the undisputed victor of the duel. The announcer makes the official call, declaring that Otto is unable to continue. A white flag waves in surrender as the crowd roars Attila's name in victory. The dust settles in the arena, leaving one man standing and a new legend born. Otto looks up at the sky, his pride shattered but his life spared. But instead of a final blow, Sato offers a hand, helping his new subordinate to his feet. He tells the former knight that he's not just some nameless mob anymore. Welcome to the main cast, buddy. He tells Otto he's a respectable warrior, a title earned in the dust of the arena. Otto's men, and even the cub, erupt in a chorus of very manly, very grateful tears. From the stands, Lord Bertrand watches the outcome with a cold, calculating gaze. And amidst the cheering crowd, a cloaked figure watches the scene unfold. The witch Batri. Elizabeth offers a knowing smile, her little game now concluded. The Calamity's cub scrambles across the arena, eager to join its victorious companion. And as the sun sets, a new, unlikely alliance is forged in the Colosseum. At Sato's request, the Kiri Mercenary Corps officially joins Lord Bertrand's army. And that night, they toast to a new beginning, their mugs clashing in celebration. Otto declares the drinks are on the new boss, and the men cheer for their unexpected fortune. The tavern is alive with the mercenaries' demands for more food. Sato watches the scene, dryly noting their surprisingly fast recovery. Otto proudly declares that a true warrior accepts defeat with grace. But his grace vanishes when Sato denies him a drink, sending him into a panic. The former knight is reduced to playfully wrestling his own men for a mug. 2 weeks later, Sato notes that Otto seems to have recovered just fine. The friendly bartender approaches, interrupting Sato's quiet meal. He wishes Sato luck in the coming war against Aquitaine. Sato's eyes narrow, questioning how the man knew about their plans. The bartender quickly blames a loose-lipped mercenary before changing the subject. But Sato's eyes narrow, his voice a low command to stay perfectly still. The bartender panics as Sato drops into a ready stance, the friendly mood shattered. With cold certainty, he declares that this man is not the real owner. His heightened senses picked up the truth. The man has no scent like a doll. He points out the obvious. A man who cooks and serves should smell like it. The bartender's face twists into a demonic visage as Sato demands his true identity. And just like that, the disguise shimmers away, revealing a creature of red energy. With Otto watching in shock, Sato confronts the mysterious being head-on. A masked figure emerges from the illusion, impressed by Sato's perception. So much for a quiet night. But he warns that knowing his identity won't save them from what's coming. The masked man summons a glowing chain, his weapon of choice. He swings it in a fiery arc, promising them a swift trip to the afterlife. The chain whips forward, but Sato dodges the deadly strike with ease. The weapon smashes the chandelier, plunging the entire tavern into darkness. But Sato's eyes are already adjusting, his focus unwavering in the sudden gloom. Otto, however, immediately begins to panic, screaming about the dark. He can't calm down, terrified of facing an assassin he can't even see. So much for the ogre blade. He screams a warning as the masked man descends for a surprise attack. The blow connects, sending a jolt of pain through the terrified mercenary. Sato grabs his panicking subordinate, telling him to stay put while he handles this. Sato's eyes narrow, deducing he's facing an assassin who specializes in disguise. The masked man is visibly stunned, his identity somehow exposed. But Sato knows more, calling him by name, Rashid, the second-ranked assassin. The unmasked assassin stands ready, his cover completely blown. With a confident smirk, Sato asks if he got the details right. A small needle clatters to the floor, a silent, deadly projectile. But Sato moves in a flash, holding the needle to the assassin's own throat. Rashid threatens him, demanding to know the source of his information. He offers a choice between a quick death or a much more painful one. But Sato just grins, questioning if he can back up that threat with just a sword hilt. Rashid lunges forward, his own needle aimed to kill. The assassin can only stare, realizing his blade is completely gone, because Sato now holds the very weapon he was threatened with. He brings the blade down in a flash, turning the tables instantly. The steel cuts cleanly through the assassin's mask, a perfect strike. The mask shatters, falling to the floor in two useless pieces. With his identity exposed, Rashid can only stare at his opponent. He screams in disbelief, demanding to know how Sato tracked his movements. Sato calmly reveals the secret, the distinct smell of hashish. The assassin realizes his own habits gave away his position in the dark. So much for being stealthy. Sato explains the faint scent of hashish was on all of his hidden weapons. The assassin can only stare, his mind reeling at being defeated by his own habits. With his spirit broken, Rashid collapses to his knees, admitting his utter defeat. But as Sato turns to leave, the assassin's eyes flare with a final, desperate resolve. He reaches out, desperately trying to stop his opponent from walking away. But Sato stops him cold, calling out a name that changes everything, Kassup. The assassin's face twists in a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. He demands to know how Sato could possibly know the name of his child. Sato just gives him a chilling grin, refusing to reveal his secrets. His mind flashes to a memory of his son, a young boy named Kassup. He knows Kassup is destined to become one of Charles Einhard's most powerful allies. The threat works perfectly as Rashid screams for him to spare his son. With the assassin completely broken, Sato lays out his one and only condition. The demand is simple and utterly humiliating: become his loyal dog. The legendary assassin can only stare, his pride warring with his desperation. Sato reassures him, saying all he has to do is follow orders without question. With no other choice, Rashid kneels, accepting the warrior's contract as absolute. Sato smiles, satisfied with his new, very skilled and very unwilling subordinate. The assassin takes the command a bit too literally, letting out a defeated bark, and Sato is left completely speechless, clearly not expecting that level of commitment. Sato awkwardly tells his new assassin that the whole dog thing was just a metaphor. But the moment is shattered as Otto and his men scream in terror at a sudden noise. Elsewhere, the witch Battery Elizabeth watches the chaos through her scrying orb. She's completely baffled by their strange ritual, wondering what god they could be praying to. Her familiar, a shadowy crow, returns to her side with a silent flap of its wings. But she just smirks, deciding she's excited to see what her new pawns will do next. And just like that, the warm spring gives way to the heat of the coming conflict. Summer arrives with a brutal training montage, with the cub acting as a tiny drill sergeant. The thundering sound of hooves signals that the time for preparation is finally over. And as the army marches, the fires of war begin to consume the land. The war begins, and with it the arrival of the man Sato has been searching for. On the other side of the battlefield, an army of foot soldiers stands ready for the clash. Red banners whip in the wind, a declaration of war against the setting sun. The cavalry charges forward, their hooves thundering across the scorched earth. A commander roars for his men to cut down their Gasconian enemies without mercy. He rallies the Aquitanian forces, demanding they show their true strength. But his speech is cut brutally short by a flash of golden steel. His men can only scream in horror as their leader falls before their very eyes. They look up in terror as a spinning axe arcs through the sky like a deadly boomerang, and a lone warrior on horseback catches the weapon without breaking stride. Well, that's one way to make an entrance. The Aquitanian soldiers brace themselves, sensing an overwhelming force charging their lines. But their fear turns to disbelief as they realize it's not an army, but a single man. And that man is Sato, screaming at his runaway horse with a terrified cub on his shoulder. The enemy soldiers can only stare, their minds completely short-circuiting at the absurd sight. His out-of-control steed plows directly into the enemy ranks, sending bodies flying. With no other choice, Sato becomes a whirlwind of destruction, his axe clearing a path. He admits this wasn't the plan, but he's going to have to improvise his grand entrance. Despite wanting to lay low, he's now single-handedly dismantling an entire army. The terrified soldiers can only scream that he's not human, but a devil from the battlefield. Their commander's voice cracks as he gives the only order left, a full panicked retreat. The remaining soldiers turn tail, desperately trying to flee the battlefield. But Sato roars that he's not letting them escape, his tiny companion echoing the sentiment. He grabs a massive wooden beam from a destroyed cart, his grip like iron. With a feral grin, he hefts the improvised weapon, ready to end this chase. He channels his power into the makeshift spear, making it glow with golden energy. A system window confirms his intent. The spear throw skill has been activated. With a furious roar, he unleashes his ridiculously oversized projectile. The massive beam soars through the air like a missile, a blur of destructive power. It finds its first target, tearing through a fleeing horse with brutal force. The improvised spear skewers the entire line of soldiers, a truly devastating strike. The improvised spear tears through the enemy line, a brutal end to their escape. With his companion on his shoulder, Sato roars for his own men to join the fray. His men can only scream for him to wait, struggling to keep up with his reckless charge. Otto realizes with dawning horror that their new boss has already started the party without them. The enemy soldiers recognize the infamous ogre blade Otto, their fear growing with every step. But they know if Otto is here, then the real monster Attila can't be far behind. Under Attila's command, the Kiri mercenary group becomes a force to be reckoned with. Even Otto fights with a newfound purpose, his fists like hammers against the enemy. Each member of their new unit plays their part in the coming conflict. And Rashid moves through the shadows, preparing them all for the true battle ahead. Elsewhere in a grand cathedral, a nomination ceremony is already underway. And the man of the hour is none other than Charles Einhard, receiving his title as a knight. He is charged with protecting the weak and upholding the truth of the kingdom. A simple yet powerful command is given, to become a knight for the people. As he rises, the ladies of the court can barely contain their admiration. They swoon over the 16-year-old hero, praising his sharp, cool eyes. But not everyone is impressed, as two nobles sneer at the commoner's promotion. They believe he's nothing more than a disposable shield for the coming war. But their condescending chatter is cut short by a sudden heavy tap on the shoulder, and it's Otto, who towers over them with a simple warning to mind their manners. A new warrior steps in, scolding them for disrespecting the new knight. The noble sputters in outrage, demanding to know who dares challenge a baron. But a calmer voice cuts in, a young warrior apologizing for their comrade's outburst. This is Pippin, vice captain of the Gold Lion mercenary group. The baron is less concerned with apologies and more with how they know his name. Pippin simply smiles, claiming they've memorized every guest at the ceremony. The noble scoffs, calling it impossible to know all 500 attendees. He dismisses it as a bluff, a cheap trick from a low-born commoner. With a polite bow, Pippin apologizes for the disturbance and turns to leave. But the baron isn't finished, furious that a commoner would dare walk away. But the warrior's eyes are cold, a silent challenge to the noble's authority. Pippin explains they were simply cautioning the baron for disrespecting Charles. He calmly points out that insulting a knight without basis is a serious crime. But his companion's smile is anything but calm, a silent, chilling threat. The baron's bravado completely evaporates, replaced by pure, unadulterated terror. He screams for them to leave, and the warrior happily obliges. Well, that was an effective negotiation. Later that night, a single firefly dances under the light of the full moon. The intense warrior watches as the small creature lands gently on their arm. It crawls along their sleeve, its light a tiny beacon in the darkness. The warrior marvels at its speed, lost in some very specific, very nerdy calculations. His comrade announces their departure for the battlefield, but Pippin senses a lingering unease. The warrior just laughs it off, dismissing his distraction as a simple bug. But Charles Einhard tells them not to waste their thoughts on powerless fools. He vows to conquer the nation, promising no one will ever disrespect his comrades again. The warrior smiles, accepting the weight of that solemn promise. With a friendly punch to the chest, their bond as brothers in arms is sealed. But the warrior suddenly recalls some new intel about a powerful mercenary in Gascony. He claims this new fighter is rumored to be as strong as Charles Einhard himself. The hero's confidence wavers, questioning if such a rival could truly exist. But his doubt quickly turns into a predatory grin. He can't wait to meet him in battle. The warrior asks a bizarre question, wondering if Sato can see the enemy from the sky. Sato can only stare back, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated confusion. The man praises him for perfectly grasping the enemy's strength, a feat Sato knows is impossible. The men celebrate, believing heaven is on their side, while Sato notes the bandit's newfound faith. The warrior smugly calls him Sir Knight, but Sato isn't buying the act for a second. But Sato knows the truth. Heaven has absolutely nothing to do with this. He simply grasps the flow of the battlefield, his author's knowledge a secret weapon. He knows he must not interfere too much, letting the original story play out. His goal is to ensure Charles finds the fairy kingdom, but the sky suddenly turns dark. The others see it as a divine omen, but Sato looks up with a growing sense of unease. A solar eclipse blots out the sun, casting a crimson shadow over the land. Sato realizes with dawning horror that this was never part of his original story. His new assassin Rashid appears from the shadows with urgent news. He reports that Charles's mercenary group will divide their forces in 5 days. Sato understands immediately. The protagonist is finally making his move. He dismisses his subordinate, his mind already racing with the implications. He recalls defeating Bleda, a victory that has now weakened Gascony's army. The Gasconian forces are being slaughtered, unable to hold their ground. And if the war ends too soon, Charles will never find the Fairy Kingdom. With a new plan forming, he calls out to his mercenary captain, Otto. He knows he can't let the history of his own world be warped any further. With a grim smile, he declares their new target, the Gold Lion Mercenary Group. Otto's reaction is a symphony of pure, unadulterated panic. He stammers in disbelief, questioning if Sato has completely lost his mind. The former knight points out they're a group of over 100 strong. He adds that their leader, Charles, is rumored to be just as strong as Sato. But Otto remembers the oath he swore after their duel, his fate already sealed. With a defeated roar, he agrees to follow his new boss into certain death. He tries to buy some time, listing all the preparations they'll need. But Sato just grins, telling him they're leaving immediately. So much for a 10-day notice. Otto can only stare back, his brain completely failing to process the command. Sato clarifies the plan. A small elite team is deploying immediately, and Otto's reaction is less brave warrior and more primal scream. 5 days later, the Southern Front is a vision of fire and chaos. A group of Aquitanian knights look on in terror, completely caught off guard. Their commander realizes with dawning horror that this wasn't in the briefing. A blade flashes through the air, signaling the start of a brutal ambush, because the Black Wolf tribe has arrived to reinforce the Gasconian army. The knights find themselves facing a wall of furious, battle-hardened warriors. And the battle begins with a brutal, bone-shattering display of the tribe's power. A warrior of the Black Wolf tribe unleashes a furious, devastating strike. The battlefield is littered with the bodies of their enemies, a testament to their brutal efficiency. Meanwhile, at the Gold Lion mercenary encampment, news of the battle is just arriving. Charles Einhard learns that the legendary Black Wolf tribe has joined the Southern Front. His men react in shock, unable to believe the fearsome tribe has sided with Gascony. But Charles remains calm, listening as he's told of their rapid, unstoppable advance. He sees this not as a setback, but as a golden opportunity to prove his strength. With new resolve, he changes his unit's orders, redirecting them straight to the front lines. His men accept without hesitation, their loyalty to their leader absolute. Pippin confirms their readiness, a confident smile on his face as they prepare to move out. Charles entrusts the second unit to his most trusted men. He then gives the order for his own first unit to deploy immediately. He offers a final quiet warning to his vice captain, Pippin. But Pippin just scoffs, dismissing the very idea of his own demise. Their other comrade agrees, telling Charles not to waste his worry. Charles gives a final command, entrusting Pippin with Ruak's safety. So much for not worrying. With his plan in motion, he rallies his men with a promise of glory. The Gold Lion mercenaries roar in approval, their loyalty absolute. Charles and his elite unit ride off into the night to begin their assault. Pippin watches them go, vowing to bring back a mountain of enemy heads. But back at the mercenary camp, Pippin senses a sudden, unwelcome presence. Before anyone can react, Otto crashes the party with a flying leap. And right behind him is Sato, a wild grin on his face as he finds his prey. The massive blade cuts through the air, a blur of golden destruction. Pippin's face twists in shock, realizing he's facing no ordinary foe. With a surge of golden energy, he stops the blade cold. Okay, so this guy's no slouch either. The mercenaries are thrown into chaos as the first attacker strikes. But the real target is Pippin, and Sato's grin says he's found him. The clash of steel rings out, a brutal opening to their deadly dance. The vice captain realizes this isn't just an ambush, it's an execution. Sato's first strike lands, drawing blood from the vice captain's chest. The scene flashes back 5 days, to the moment the sun was blotted from the sky. Otto was understandably having a complete meltdown over the 5-man army plan, but Sato knew this was the only way to rebalance the scales of the war. He understood that their window of opportunity was incredibly small, and that chance was now, while the protagonist was away from his camp. Back in the present, Otto crashes the party, taking out the first guard. Pippin is sent reeling, caught completely off guard by the sudden chaos. Sato smirks, telling the vice captain to just play along quietly. With the camp now on high alert, Sato stands ready to face them all. From the bushes, Otto and his men watch in horror as their boss is surrounded. He screams for them to hold their position, insisting it's all part of the plan. He clarifies the grand strategy. Sato mows down the enemy while they watch, a truly foolproof plan. Sato lets out a weary sigh, completely unfazed by the army surrounding him. He admits the original plan was a simple hit and run, but things have gotten complicated. The enemy mercenaries charge forward, a wave of steel aimed to overwhelm him. He meets their charge with a leap, his axe a blur of golden light. The blade tears through their ranks in a brutal, fiery display of power, but 3 more descend from above, ready to strike him down. Their blades find nothing but dirt, their target having vanished in an instant. A warning cry rings out as Sato descends from the sky like a meteor. The mercenaries can only scream, their eyes wide with pure, unadulterated terror. He gathers his power, his very core glowing with a destructive golden light. A wild grin spreads across his face as he prepares to unleash his attack. He slams into the ground, shattering the earth in a massive, fiery explosion. The shockwave rips through the camp, a testament to his overwhelming power. From the bushes, Otto pretends this was all part of the plan. Sure it was, buddy. The remaining mercenaries are thrown like dolls in the chaotic aftermath. A lone survivor stands amidst the dust, his mind struggling to process the attack. But the real fight begins as 2 of the unit's strongest warriors step forward. The first warrior, Ruach, remembers his promise to Charles: protect Pippin at all costs. The second warrior, Pippin, steels herself, knowing Ruach is her last line of defense. With a surge of power, Ruach vows to be her shield no matter what. His mind flashes back to the family he found, the one he was taught to protect. He remembers Charles and Pippin, the core of his new hard-won family. And with that resolve, he unleashes a devastating punch, ready to defend them. A furious roar tears from his throat as he channels all of his strength. His entire body becomes a weapon, a wall of pure, unyielding power. He leaps between Sato and Pippin, declaring himself the shield of his comrades. But Sato just grins, impressed by the warrior's sudden display of power. Ruach confronts him, asking if he's the infamous Massacre Man. Sato just smirks, admitting the name is starting to stick. The warrior's grip tightens, his resolve hardening into steel. He introduces himself as Ruach, the assault unit captain ready to fight. With a look of pure determination, he vows to take Sato down. But Sato's grin is anything but worried. He looks absolutely thrilled. Ruach lets out a furious battle cry, channeling all of his power. He brings his weapon down in a massive, earth-shattering strike. But the blow only finds empty ground, Sato having dodged with impossible speed. Our boy is already in the air, ready to counter with a devastating attack of his own. He brings the axe down, its blade wreathed in a destructive, fiery aura. The blade connects, shattering Ruach's defense in a single brutal strike. The warrior can only scream as the force of the blow rips through him. Pippin cries out in horror, watching her last line of defense fall. Ruach is sent flying, his body a testament to Sato's overwhelming power. With a confident grin, Sato decides that should be enough to get their attention. Pippin is left alone, finally understanding the legend of the Massacre Man. She realizes with dawning horror that he's as strong as her captain, Charles. A fire of pure, unadulterated rage ignites in her eyes. No, she corrects herself. This man might be even stronger. She knows this man is a threat that must be eliminated for her comrades. But Sato just stares back, his golden eyes completely unfazed by her resolve. With a furious roar, she rallies her remaining forces to her side. She gives the command, ordering her men to form a defensive shield wall. She leaps into the air, a beacon of defiance for her charging soldiers. From the bushes, Otto has a minor, completely understandable panic attack. But Sato is impressed, acknowledging Pippin's skill as a commander. Her command instantly reignites the morale of her wavering soldiers. Their fear is replaced by a burning resolve to defend their camp. She calls for her archers, who draw their bows in perfect unison. With a furious roar, she gives the command for her archers to fire. Another commander screams for the garrison to form a defensive shield wall. The soldiers lock their shields, forming an impenetrable advancing phalanx. But Sato just smirks, recognizing the classic, well-executed tactic. It's a simple strategy. Overlap shields and advance as a single unified unit. They defend as one, unleashing a volley of arrows from behind their wall. And then they attack as one, a coordinated wave of steel and death. It's the perfect strategy for crushing a single disorganized opponent. But Sato stands his ground, a golden aura flaring as he prepares to meet them. From the bushes, Otto and his men can only scream in terror as the army charges. He shouts a warning to his own men, who are still hiding in the bushes. A system window confirms his analysis. Tactic detection is now active. With a confident grin, he knows a rain of arrows is about to fall. The archers behind the shield wall draw their bows in perfect unison. A deadly volley darkens the sky, aimed to pin him down completely. But Sato just looks up, completely unfazed by the incoming storm of steel. Otto and his men, however, are having a full-blown panic attack. Guess they should have listened. These aren't just arrows, they're massive enchanted bolts meant to obliterate. The projectiles slam into the ground, erupting in a series of fiery explosions. And Sato makes a tactical retreat, carrying his entire squad on his back. He knows he's done some damage, but their rapid-fire bows have him pinned down. He tells his men to get off, and they immediately assume he's abandoning them. But he just drops them to the ground, his eyes fixed on the enemy line. With a confident grin, he tells them he's going to stop the archers himself. Pippin roars for her men not to let him escape, ordering them to shoot him down. A fresh volley of enchanted arrows darkens the sky, ready to strike. But Sato leaps into the air, dodging the explosive bolts with impossible agility. He charges headfirst into the storm of steel, a truly brilliant tactical decision. Otto and his men can only scream in horror as the arrows close in. But Sato becomes a whirlwind of golden light, deflecting every single projectile. A new skill activates, a flash of blue energy in the chaos of battle. Sato's eyes narrow, a confident smirk playing on his lips. He snatches a spear from a fallen soldier without breaking stride. With his new weapon in hand, he stands ready to counterattack. He launches himself forward, a blur of motion aimed right at the shield wall. He soars through the air, a golden meteor descending upon the terrified army. Pippin and her men can only stare, their minds failing to process his impossible feat. She screams in disbelief, questioning what kind of monster she's truly facing. Sato's hair flares red as he laughs, clearly enjoying this a little too much. The vice captain's face twists in terror, realizing he's not just fighting, he's having fun. He lands with enough force to crack the very earth beneath him. With a wild grin, he unleashes a devastating swing of his axe. He hurls the weapon, turning it into a spinning golden boomerang of death. The axe cuts through the air, a blur of pure destructive energy. It smashes through the shield wall, shattering their formation in an instant. Otto and his men can only scream, their jaws hitting the floor. So much for their tactical analysis. Pippin's face twists in horror, her perfect strategy completely undone. The axe arcs back through the air, returning to its master's hand. He catches it without even looking, the weapon's power still humming. He lands amidst the chaos, a one-man army ready to finish the job. Pippin can't believe it. Their formation, honed over years of battle, was completely shattered by a single, ridiculously overpowered axe throw. She looks up at the monster who defeated them, her thoughts turning to Charles. In her mind, she offers a final, silent apology for her failure. With her spirit broken, she collapses to her knees, ready for the end. Sato raises his axe, its fiery blade ready to deliver the final judgment. The vice captain can only brace herself, the weight of her defeat crushing. But instead of a final blow, Sato just grins, admitting he had a good time. He lowers his weapon, the battle apparently over in his mind. And with a final, casual turn, he walks away, leaving her to process her defeat. Pippin can only scream in frustration, her pride completely shattered. The weight of her failure is a bitter, undeniable truth. And with their mission complete, Sato and his men retreat into the night. Otto, meanwhile, is having a very public, very loud near-death experience. He even demands their new boss carry them for the rest of the war. But Sato just informs him that his training is starting over from square one. As they ride, a messenger bird cuts through the quiet of the night. It lands on his arm, a silent delivery from a familiar shadow. The note is from Rashid, his new assassin turned intel gatherer. But whatever news it carries, it's enough to wipe the victory from Sato's face. The news sends Sato into a furious charge, his men struggling to keep up. He ignores their calls, his eyes fixed on a single urgent destination. He arrives at a quiet encampment under the light of the full moon. And there he is, the man he's been searching for, Charles Einhard.